my channel. My name is Carly Stevens. I'm the author of the young adult fantasy Firian Rising, and this is English Nerd. So today I wanted to do a little demonstration of what I consider to be probably the most important skill in AP literature. I'm about to start my 10th year of teaching AP, and I of course took it myself in high school and was successful at that. So with all that said, I wanted to pass along some of the knowledge that I've gained and that's really worked for me and my students to be successful. So I've made some previous videos about basic analysis skills. It's all about just observing and then making connections. So it's not just the what and the how, but it's the why. AP Lit takes that same idea to another level. How all the pieces fit together into one greater message. Or the way that I like to put it is form and content. How does the form support the content? Or other people will say style and substance. How does the style support the substance? How is the way that something is said supporting what is being said? And the authors that are the most successful at that are the ones that we tend to read over and over again because there's so much that we can learn from them. So I've chosen two pieces of literature to unpack today. I'm not going to be unpacking everything. I'm not going to be essentially writing an essay for you because I don't want to help you cheat or anything. I just want to help you gain the skills to do this on your own. So we'll be unpacking a prose passage from One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich by Solzhenitsyn, and we'll also be looking at part of a poem by Gerard Manley Hopkins. These are, not uncommon types of works that you could see on the AP exam, so I think that they're pretty good indicators of what you might encounter. So here's the first passage. Again, it's from One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich, and the first thing that you want to do when you're figuring out how does the form support the content, when you're doing this kind of analysis, is you want to read the entire passage or whatever the section may be, or the entire poem, so that you can get a sense of just what it's about. Think of yourself almost like a forensic scientist. You're gathering data. You are picking up clues, and then later on you'll try to figure out the most logical way to fit those together. So what you have here is a scene at the beginning of the novel when Ivan Denisovich is going to breakfast. Now, I'm not going to read through this entire thing. I'm just going to point out a few observations, a few whats, and then we'll go from that to a potential why. Why would the writer use this kind of language or use this literary device? Basically, why would he write, or she, but he in this case, why would he write in this style? What message is he really trying to nail home to the reader? So you'll notice in this, the first time you read it, a few things should stand out to you. There are some really beautiful examples of imagery. Whenever the door opened, frosty air mingled with the steam. That's really vivid, so we'll hang on to that. So we have some good imagery. At the end of that paragraph, we see a lot of exclamation points. That's pretty rare to see that many exclamation points, so we'll put that on the shelf as well. You'll also notice at the end of that paragraph that those exclamation points are almost all connected to commands, which is even rarer than having exclamation points. Must be deaf, the blockhead. Take that for bumping the tray and making me spill the stuff. That's it. Use your free hand. Give him one in the neck. That's the stuff. You there, don't get in the way looking for leftovers. It's all direct address. It's all commands. So let's just take those things. So we've noticed that we have some vivid imagery. We've noticed that there's some exclamation points. We've noticed that there's direct address to presumably the reader. Now, of course, there's more that you could point out here, more clues and evidence that you could gather, but we'll just go with those three. So if we have this clear imagery, what does imagery do? Imagery like this, it places us in that situation. It helps us to feel the frosty air mingling with the steam. If you're directly addressed, that also brings you into the story. It brings you into the moment. All those exclamation points and the kind of informal way that that comes across also brings you in. It's almost like a friend talking to you, or you're overhearing something that's actually being said. So we can see that all of these observations in this paragraph that we've made so far can be connected in that sense, that they're very intentionally making the reader experience what Ivan Denisovich is experiencing, even though this is not in first person. So why would Solzhenitsyn want that? Well, when we read it in more context to make sure that we're correct, then we'll see that Solzhenitsyn wants the reader to experience Ivan Denisovich's day moment by moment, and intentionally draws the reader into experiencing it as though he's there himself, so that we can understand how terrible the Gulag system was in Russia in the 1950s. And again, you need greater context to connect those things, but even just with that little paragraph, we were able to gather some evidence, and we were able to make some meaningful connections about how the way that it's written is supporting what's being written about. It's almost like a manual for how to survive in this horrible situation. So I know that these demonstrations are incomplete, but they are meant to be helpful starters for you to do your own work. So that's prose, One Day in the Life. Let's take a look at Gerard Manley Hopkins. I love the poem that we're going to be looking at today. It's one of my favorites. It gives me all the feels. And again, we're not going to read through the entire thing. It's not that it's a long poem exactly, but it's too long for my short demonstration. It's called Carrion Comfort, and you don't need to know the background, but it's Hopkins was himself having this crisis of faith. He was struggling with depression and despair, and so this is the poem that he wrote in response to it. Again, you don't need the historical context to really figure that out yourself with how the form matches the content. He begins the poem this way. I'll not carrion comfort, despair, not feast on thee, not untwist, slack they may be, these last strands of man in me, or, most weary, cry, I can no more. I can something, hope, wish day come, not choose not to be. So we'll go with 4 lines and see where that gets us. Again, if you're going to be doing analysis, you have to read the entire thing so that you get just the basic information about what this poem is saying surface level, or what this prose passage is saying surface level. But we can already gather quite a bit about how the form matches what's being said in the first 4 lines of this poem. So again, we just gather evidence. It's a very stress-free kind of beginning to analysis. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know how it all connects. You just have to start picking up these pieces. So you might notice, for instance, that the first line has tons of commas. I'll not, carrion comfort, despair, not feast on thee. That's kind of weird. Lots of commas, lots of pauses. Not is repeated a few times, so that's also a bit odd. You can actually do this as an exercise right now if you want to. Just grab a pen and paper and write down some things that you notice. If you know literary devices, if you know metaphors and something go beyond metaphors like metonymy or something like that, then go write those down. Apostrophe, this one's kind of an apostrophe, a direct address to something absent or inanimate. I guess it is an apostrophe. We have some personification of despair. It's all capitalized. So if you want to get fancy, you can do that, but make a list and see what are some of the things that you notice in the beginning of Carrion Comfort. Let's take the first line, the things that I mentioned. Lots of commas. Not is repeated 3 times. And then you look at what it literally is saying. I'll not carrion comfort, despair, not feast on thee. So I will not feast on you, despair. You are carrion comfort. Carrion, you might need to look up the word. It's dead flesh, so he's not going to feast on this carrion that seems like nourishment but isn't. So why all those commas? You need more context, of course, than just the first line to really make a solid prediction there, solid analysis, but it seems like he's under an enormous amount of stress. you see this even with current books. I read a lot of YA. If somebody is under a lot of stress and you're really in their head, then you get a lot of commas or a lot of really shortened thoughts, fragments when people are completely freaking out. And it almost sounds like he's hyperventilating, I'll not carry comfort, despair, not feast on thee. And all that repetition as well has a similar effect. And so this puts us right in his mind, in the mind of the narrator, and it shows the desperation that he has to free himself from this despair. We see the same kind of thing in the fourth line. I can something, hope, wish they come, not choose, not to be. All those commas, all that hesitation and desperation. You could continue. You could look at how there's an accent on the or. Hopkins was somebody who really liked to play around with where the accent fell in the words, and so he'll put accent marks in strange places where he wants you to accentuate the word. Almost like when you're rapping, you can't just say the line. You have to put emphasis sometimes in places where it wouldn't normally belong, just because that's the way that's what's supposed to be emphasized to make the line work. So in me, or most weary, cry I can no more. Or, he's really emphasizing that or. So it's a person who's weighing his options. And we start to get a clearer picture just from these small observations about how it's written, what the content is, what's being said. Again, it's how does the style support the substance of the work? How does the way that it's written support the meaning of it? So we have somebody who is panicking, who is weighing his options, who is desperately trying to almost untangle himself from the clutches of despair, and we're meant to, go on this journey with him and gain that same kind of fight against despair, I would say, again, in context of the whole thing. So I hope that was helpful for you. Seeing how you can take poetry or how you can take prose, starting with basic observations and moving on to how they all fit together, and then finally why do they fit together in that way, and what is the message of the work? What are we as the audience supposed to get out of it? Because in AP Lit, that's the progression in the test, and I would say in pretty much all good analysis anyway. So there you go. If you have any additional questions, put those down below, and don't forget to subscribe for more English nerdy goodness. All right.